You'd be surprised how many times these people come out of left field with all kinds of resolutions that would greatly diminish the responsibility and the autonomy of the women's division.
During times when many women have doubted their role and power in male-dominated church hierarchies, Theressa Hoover, Deputy General Secretary of the Women's Division of the Board of Global Ministries for more than 2 decades, was an unflagging and unapologetic advocate for the political, spiritual, and economic autonomy of women around the world.
It is an organization that sees mission in many places, including in our own heads and hearts, so that ideas, developing ideas, sustaining programs of education, in my view, is as much mission as making available $1,000 to dig a well in Nairobi.
From her earliest beginnings with the Little Rock Methodist Council, to her decade of service as a Christian Service field worker, to her participation in the World Council of Churches, Theressa Hoover seemed to be clear about one thing. If she was going to do God's work, she was going to do it boldly, intelligently, and with complete commitment. She would always bear in mind that women's voices, visions, and concerns historically guided, affected, and strengthened the church. And as a United Methodist woman, doing the mission of Jesus Christ often meant going to the mat on behalf of the oppressed and dispossessed, even if that meant butting heads with male clergy and membership.
Theressa Hoover was an individual, is, always will be, a person to whom many, many individuals throughout not only United Methodism, throughout the ecumenical movement, and literally around the world have looked to not only for inspiration but for vision.
In her earliest days, Theressa faced many hurdles because of her sex. And as one of the first women of color in the women's division, she also faced and broke through racial barriers.
First of all, they really had no power over me. Even though in the United Methodist Church, we are more advanced than a lot of Protestant churches, but we still have the age-old battle of women and minorities, and I always represented both. As I worked for the Women's Division and became the executive for the Women's Division, what I always heard from most of my detractors was, they really meant aggressive, and that sort of thing. And I said, well, you wouldn't be breathing if you weren't aggressive in my position. And I think in the church, I would have gone further quicker had I heard that what they perceived as aggression. I simply saw it as expressing myself.
She blazed many trails for us. Most of these churches had never had a black person to come in even as a speaker. And so she had some rough times, but she was equal to the task.
Ms. Hoover's work through the Women's Division was always on the cutting edge. She deeply believed in Jesus' mandate to care for the least of these, and that the church needed to be held accountable for its mission. A prophetic voice, she challenged racially separatist tactics by white church leaders, like that of the Central Jurisdiction.
The Methodist Church was divided into 5 jurisdictions, jurisdictionally dividing the map of the United States into 5 parts. But then there was one jurisdiction called Central Jurisdiction, and it covered 39 of the then 49 states. And in that jurisdiction were all of the black Methodist churches. And that was a compromise reached at the time of the Southern Church and the Methodist Episcopal, which was the Northern Church, and the Protestant Church. Those three came together to form the then Methodist Church. The women made contacts. They just do. They do things alike. Every one of them, I'm sure, had cooked meals and worried about the kids who were out late at night or whatever the problem. So they had a lot in common. And you could take advantage of that relationship and help those women begin to muster the kind of support that would get our resolutions voted through General Conference. One of the things about General Conference, if you check your history, and the United Methodist Church has pretty good statements on race. It even has good statements on the United Nations. That's just two areas I would mention that came very definitely out of the organized work of the Organization of Women. All of that was a part of trying to help people see how they could work across these racial lines, in spite of what General Conference may have done in setting us up toward racial, with those racial distinctions.
Today, Ms. Hoover is a staunch believer in the importance of women educating themselves in biblical mandates, the history of the church, the women's movements, and the economic, religious, and political realities of the world they live in.
I think the young women, if I were going to talk to them and expect them to listen, I would say that they must find a way to always broaden the scope of their understanding. Understand issues so that when you hear something on television about Israel and the Palestinians, you would have something to connect that to. It isn't just coming up out of the clear blue. It's a matter of knowing your world, being a part of it, and trying to be an identifying part so that you can separate the chaff from the wheat. Some people who just think everything is fine because now we can do this, we can do that. And then there are others who don't really accept or even understand that they're being bought off. Always had the battle. We've always had the battle because there's always one out of every 25, it seems, that's going to be willing to sell off whatever for what she perceives as growth and advancement for people with power.
Ms. Hoover hopes young women in today's church remain steadfast in guarding the sister power and autonomy of United Methodist women.
And so every 4 years, we have to make sure we get the right people at the General Conference. And those women know that you do not leave. If they go on to 2 o'clock in the morning, you are right there. And if you're just ready to fall out, you find somebody else to fall in. Because some jerk will come in at the last minute and he will have some little resolution to dissolve the women's organization, wherever it is, just crazy stuff. But you stay awake and you keep somebody awake so that we're pretty good watchdogs. One has to be.
Theressa Hoover continues to inspire, motivate, and encourage today's women to be vocal and active in the church and society, rather than remaining passive and accepting of its inherently male concerns. And it's with this eye, on both its past and its future, that she believes United Methodist women can best continue to impact change and fulfill Christ's mission on behalf of women, children, and youth.